What does it take to be seen as a formidable force in a place like the Lands Between? When there are monsters the size of small homes roaming the lands and demigods vying for power, what strength then does an army truly have? When men like Radahn and women like Malenia could fell an entire army with one swing of their blades, how do you become known as a force to be reckoned with? By fighting as if you have no future, like every battle could be your last. By fighting like the Cleanrot Knights. In today's Elden lore, we're going to take a look at Malenia's elite guard, the Cleanrot Knights, where their loyalty lies, their place in the history of the Lands Between, and the story of the only named Cleanrot Knight we can find in Elden Ring, Finlay. Before we start our dissection of these enemies, we wanted to take a second to ask you to subscribe to our channel. If this is your first episode of Elden lore, thank you for joining us, and we hope you enjoy the stories we're telling. We've built up a fairly large collection of videos diving into the minutiae of the Lands Between, so feel free to explore our catalog. If you're a repeat viewer, thank you for sticking around. You're the reason we make these videos, and the reason we're always trying to improve the quality of our content. With that said, let's begin. The Cleanrot Knights are found in many places through the Lands Between, but where many of us likely had our first experience with them was in the fetid lands of Caelid, where they remained after the epic clash between Malenia and Radahn. In order to gain an understanding of who these knights were, we can look at their armor and equipment. Their armor tells us they were celebrated for their undefeated campaign in the Shattering. The Cleanrot Knights vowed to fight alongside Malenia, despite the inevitable, if gradual, putrefaction of their flesh. Their acceptance of their fate made these battles fiercest of all. So right out of the gate, we have two important facts about these knights. One, that their campaign during the Shattering was seen as undefeated, which many Radahn fans would likely argue against. And two, that these knights are all afflicted with a scarlet rot. To further solidify their victory over Radahn's forces, we can actually look toward the Redmane Knight armor, which tells us, when they were driven to defeat by Malenia's scarlet rot, the Redmane Knights burned the crest on the left breast of their armor to indicate their resolve. You can still argue that the battle between Malenia and Radahn was essentially a draw, with Malenia falling into a deep slumber, and Radahn losing any sense of humanity after being so thoroughly afflicted by the rot. But when it comes to the battle of their armies, it seems set in stone that the Cleanrot Knights were considered the victors over the Redmanes. We can still see this fierce battle raging on if we visit the Dead Catacombs in Caelid. It seems as though the massive amounts of dead left in the wake of this war were not necessarily given a proper burial. Their spirits live on in these catacombs, endlessly at war with each other. You can see the ferocity of the Cleanrot Knights on display in these catacombs, as not only are their spirits difficult enemies for our Tarnished to fight, but they seem to take on multiple Redmanes at a time. A one-on-one battle between a Cleanrot Knight and any of Radahn's forces would certainly end in their defeat, so they have to use numbers against their rotted foes in order to have even a chance at victory. The armor of the Cleanrot Knights talks about their campaign during the Shattering. While there isn't much information on the specifics behind each battle during this time, we know a few things. Firstly, these knights fought under Malenia, who called herself the Blade of Miquella. So interestingly, in truth, they were fighting not only for their lady, but likely also to put Miquella on the throne, as that was Malenia's purpose, to see her brother rise to power. As to why they were participating in this great war to begin with, we don't have a clear answer. Miquella and Malenia seem to want to create a new path to the Lands Between, which may not even require an Elden Lord. However, with the other demigods warring and taking runes for themselves in a bid for power, it's possible Malenia took the Cleanrot Knights to battle in order to snuff out the ambitions of her family and make room for her brother's ultimate rule. This would make sense, as we know she and her forces did battle with Godric, bringing his castle to its knees, but didn't kill him or take his great rune. Their campaign seems to have been more about paving the way for their future ruler than consolidating power on their own. We can see the tie between the Cleanrot Knights and Miquella in the items that they have the possibility of dropping upon defeat. The lesser Cleanrot Knights actually have a slight chance of dropping both Miquella and Trina's lilies upon their death. If we look at the description of Trina's lilies, they tell us they are a symbol of faith in Saint Trina that dulls the senses, preventing agitation. Perhaps these lilies were given to each knight as an additional ward to keep them from feeling the effect of the rot during battle. If their senses are dull to the constant pain they must be in, that would help them to fight more fiercely. To us, this is further confirmation of the undeniable tie between Miquella and Saint Trina. This is not all though. The Halo Scythe, carried by some Cleanrot Knights, ties them to Miquella's power as well. War Scythe of the Cleanrot Knights, who fought alongside Malenia, Blade of Miquella. This was the weapon of commanders in Malenia's army, and the half-halo blade deals holy damage. The specific holy damage mentioned comes in the form of their unique Ash of War, Miquella's Ring of Light. This ability produces the very same rings of light that Miquella gifted to his father, Radagon, in the form of incantations. When looking at them in this light, it seems the ferocity of the Cleanrot Knights comes not only from their connection to Malenia's rot, but the power of Miquella as well. So we've established the strength of these knights and the source of their power, but the question still remains: how do they survive so long while afflicted by scarlet rot? Thankfully, this has a straightforward explanation. The Cleanrot Spear tells us it is the Spear of the Cleanrot Knights who fought alongside Malenia, Blade of Miquella. The winged golden blade deals holy damage. The diminutive shield is blessed with an incantation that wards off rot. It would seem that this tiny shield attached to their spears actually keeps the effects of the rot at bay, at least slightly. With our established connection between Miquella and the Knights, it would be safe to assume Miquella was the one to imbue the shields with this ward, especially since we know one of his ultimate goals was to cure Malenia of her rot, and he had studied every possible way of making this a reality. The Cleanrot Knights can be found in various areas of the land that have been affected by the scarlet rot, but one of the most important in our eyes is the Shaded Castle. This castle was once a place where the Golden Order would send those who broke the rule of law to be executed. While its reputation may have once been strong within the Order, the head of House Murray became obsessed with Malenia and pledged himself only to her. This saw rot take the land while Cleanrot Knights came to make camp in the castle. One of them can even be found protecting a prosthetic arm we can retrieve from Millicent. While the Murray family lost control of the castle after the failed execution of Elemer of the Briar, the bell-bearing hunter, it seems as though the knights still maintain their posts. Even though the castle has a new master, he doesn't seem interested in starting a feud with the most powerful knights in the land. This is the legacy of the Cleanrot Knights. They followed two of the current Empyreans into glorious battle, defeating every enemy that stood in their path. And while this speaks to their strength, there was one among them whose dedication to their lady and journey to deliver her home safely speaks to their valor. Cleanrot Knight Finlay is a shining example of the strength and dedication of these knights. When we find her ashes, we learn they are legendary ashen remains, and that Finlay was one of the few survivors of the Battle of the Aeonia, who in an unimaginable act of heroism carried the slumbering demigod Malenia all the way back to the Haligtree. She managed the feat alone, fending off all manner of foes along the way. We know the toll the Battle of the Aeonia took on not only Malenia, but the land of Caelid. The wasteland left in the battle's wake has created one of the most dangerous landscapes the Lands Between has to offer. With that in mind, it is impossible to imagine that not only did Finlay survive that battle, but she was able to carry Malenia all the way back to the Haligtree by herself. But according to lore, this is exactly what happened. In order to understand the gravity of this achievement, it's important to consider just how far Caelid is from the Haligtree. Finlay would have had to carry an unconscious Malenia out of Caelid, through Limgrave, then make her way all the way from Liurnia of the Lakes to the Altus Plateau, a land under the watchful eye of Morgoth the Omen King. We have to assume that in order to reach the consecrated snowfield, Finlay must have had to parley with the forces of Leyndell, as there's no way through without entering the city. From there, she needed to brave the snowy terrain until reaching the portal to the Haligtree, all with Malenia in tow. After her arrival, Finlay was likely met by the residents of Miquella's home, who could help her get Malenia to the inner chamber. This is a journey we ourselves make, but the circumstances are wholly different. We conquer the lands with the strength of Tarnished, able to gather great runes and turn runes into strength. Finlay was one knight, carrying her god on her back, and through sheer force of will, she survived and brought Malenia home. Regardless of your feelings on Malenia, Finlay was clearly a hero to those who believed in the promise of Miquella and the Haligtree. The Cleanrot Knights are a force to be reckoned with, and we hope you enjoyed our exploration of their story. What do you think of their reputation in the Lands Between? Was it earned? Or do you believe their association with Malenia built them into something more than they actually were? Comment letting us know. Personally, I would love more detail on the journey of Finlay from Caelid to the Haligtree. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell if you enjoyed our content. We look forward to seeing you again for more Elden Lore.